The well, they couldn't shut off. The first time I noticed my water pressure drop, I thought it was the pump. Out where I live, in a stretch of Como County they call Piney Ridge, that happens. Old pumps, old pipes, old land that doesn't always cooperate. So on a Tuesday morning, when my kitchen faucet coughed instead of ran, I didn't think twice. I figured I'd crawl under the house that weekend and take a look. Then it happened again on Wednesday. And Thursday, always around 6 a.m., always for about 20 minutes. Then back to normal like nothing occurred. By Friday, I stopped assuming and started paying attention. My name is Marcus Doyle. I'm 38. I install and repair irrigation systems for a living, and I own 4 acres at the edge of a subdivision called Cedar Hollow Farms Abrauer, which, despite the name, has never grown a single crop in its life. It's roof lines and privacy fences and a clubhouse nobody uses. My land predates the subdivision by about 30 years. My grandmother's well predates the subdivision's water main by even longer. That well isn't just plumbing to me. It's one of the only things left that was hers. The woman who ran Cedar Hollow's Homeowners Association was Patricia Lindell. I'd met her exactly twice before that week, both times at community meetings. I only attended because my property line technically touched theirs. She had the kind of voice that assumed you'd already agreed with her before she finished the sentence, and a habit of calling every rule. Just how we do things here, like custom outranked law. On Saturday, I finally went looking. My property backs up to a shared utility easement, a strip of land where the subdivision's water line runs underground toward my old well casing, close enough that decades ago, somebody spliced the two systems together to save money on drilling. It had worked fine for years. Everybody left it alone. Except now there was a padlocked metal box sitting right on top of the junction, brand new, with a Cedar Hollow HOA sticker on the lid. I called the association office. A woman named Denise answered, sounded tired, and transferred me to Patricia before I finished my second sentence. "Mr. Doyle," Patricia said, like she'd been expecting the call and had rehearsed being unbothered by it. "We installed a regulatory valve on that junction. Community infrastructure requires oversight. That junction feeds my well," I said. "It's not community infrastructure. It's mine. It sits within our easement. The easement lets the water line pass through. It doesn't give you ownership of what's attached to it," she sighed. The kind of sigh people use when they think they're being patient with someone slow. "Mr. Doyle, residents have raised concerns about unregulated water usage in that area. We're simply managing shared resources responsibly. There's nothing shared about it." "That's my grandmother's well. I understand this is emotional for you," she said. "But the board has already voted." I hung up before I said something I couldn't walk back. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, the way my father used to when a problem was bigger than a phone call could fix. I wrote down every fact I actually had. The well's original drilling permit from 1968, the county water rights registration under my grandmother's name, then transferred to mine, and the shared line agreement from 1991 that let the subdivisions contractor tie into the easement an agreement that said nothing, anywhere, about control. I called the county water authority the next morning. A technician named Priya Anand looked up the records while I waited on hold, humming along to hold music I didn't recognize. "Your well predates their entire system, Mr. Doyle," she said, "and this shared line agreement, it's for passage, not access. They can't legally restrict, flow to a private well through a public easement without your consent or a court order. So the valve, illegal on its face. I document it." So I did. I photographed the box from every angle. I logged every morning the pressure dropped, arrow 604, 611, 622, arrow with times and dates. I mounted a small trail camera on a fence post overlooking the easement, angled so it caught the box and the access road behind it. 4 days later, the footage showed a maintenance truck with a Cedar Hollow logo pulling up at 5:58 a.m. A man got out, unlocked the box, turned a valve handle, checked his watch, and drove off 22 minutes later, right as my faucet always came back to life. I sent the clip, along with my drilling permit and the water rights registration, to Priya. She forwarded it to the county attorney's office the same afternoon, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously they took it. I also sent a certified letter to the HOA board, not to Patricia, To all of them, all laying out the well's legal history, the county's preliminary finding, and a formal demand to remove the valve within 7 days or face legal action for tortious interference with water rights and unauthorized restriction of a protected utility. Patricia called me herself the next morning, and for the first time, her voice had an edge under the smoothness. "You're overreacting," she said. "This was never about you personally. You cut my water on purpose 20 minutes a day for over a week. We were managing usage." "You were managing me?" I said. "Because you assumed I wouldn't check." There was a pause. Then, "People like you always think you're the exception to every rule." "There's no rule that lets you touch my well, Patricia." "There never was." She didn't answer that. She hung up. The valve stayed. So did the water shutoffs. Day 9, day 10. On day 11, I noticed the pressure hadn't just dropped arrow. It hadn't come back at all by 7 a.m. I checked the box myself this time, camera rolling on my phone, and found the valve turned fully closed, not partially. Like someone had decided 20 minutes wasn't punishment enough anymore. That was the day I stopped writing letters and called a lawyer. Her name was Grace Whitfield. And she didn't waste time being outraged on my behalf. She just started building. She filed for an emergency temporary restraining order that afternoon, citing interference with a documented private water right, attaching my permit, the county's preliminary findings, and the camera footage showing the valve being manually operated by HOA personnel. The judge granted it within 2 days. The order required Cedar Hollow to remove the valve immediately and barred any further interference with the shared line, pending a full hearing. A locksmith and a county inspector showed up together to cut the padlock. Patricia showed up too, unannounced, standing at the edge of the easement with her arms crossed like she was supervising a mistake she hadn't made. "This isn't over," she told me. "It kind of is," I said. "You just don't know it yet." She didn't, because she didn't know what. Grace had found while pulling records for the hearing. Grace had subpoenaed the HOA's maintenance, invoices to prove the valve. Installation was unauthorized, spending outside normal board budgets. What she found instead was a pattern of invoices for irrigation regulation equipment and utility oversight services, going back nearly 2 years, paid to a contracting company registered under Patricia's brother-in-law's name, for work nobody could produce a single work order for. At the hearing, Patricia's attorney tried to frame the valve as a good-faith safety measure. The judge asked her directly whether the board had any legal basis to restrict a registered private well through a shared easement. Her attorney said the board believed it had implied authority under the community bylaws. Implied by what? The judge asked. If not written anywhere? Nobody had an answer for that. The restraining order became permanent. Cedar Hollow was ordered to pay for the county inspection, my attorney's fees, and damages for the documented days of interrupted water access. And because the invoice trail had already reached the county attorney's desk through the water rights. Complaint, a second, quieter investigation opened this one into HOA fund misuse. 2 months later, Patricia resigned from the board days before the county's findings became public. The contracting company's registration was suspended pending review. A woman from the HOA came by not long after. The way people do when they want absolution more than forgiveness. She stood at my gate and said, "Patricia told us the well thing was a legal gray area." I told her I believed that Patricia had said it. I didn't tell her it changed anything. Because it didn't. Gray areas don't need padlocks. Gray areas don't need somebody sneaking out at 6 in the morning to close a valve on someone else's water. I still have that trail camera up. I don't need it for evidence anymore. The case is long closed, but I keep it there anyway, angled at the spot where the box used to sit. Some habits you keep not because you're afraid, but because you remember what it cost you to stop being quiet. So tell me, was I wrong to let this go all the way to court over 20 minutes of water a day? Or was that 20 minutes never really the point? Have you ever had someone with a title, an HOA president, a landlord, a manager, all decide that shared meant whatever was convenient for them? Tell me your story in the comments, because somewhere right now, somebody's being told a rule exists that was never actually written down, and they need to hear that checking the paperwork is not the same thing as starting a war.